You're doing everything right, saving, investing, not doing anything obviously stupid, and yet your net worth barely moves. Month after month, the number creeps up just enough to confirm you're not going backwards, but not nearly fast enough to feel like it's actually working. Here's what nobody tells you. That feeling isn't failure, it's a phase and it ends. Wealth doesn't grow in a straight line. It moves in jumps, long stretches of almost nothing, followed by moments where the whole thing starts accelerating in a way that feels almost unfair. There are 3 of those moments. In the next 8 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what triggers each one, what they feel like when they hit, and how to make sure you're positioned to benefit when they do. Let's name what's actually happening when wealth building feels slow. You contribute $500 a month. The market returns 8%. And at the end of the year, you've got maybe $6,200 more than you started with. You feel the contributions. The returns feel like rounding errors. So the natural human conclusion is, this isn't working fast enough. Maybe I need a different strategy. Maybe I need to take more risk. Maybe I need to time this better. Almost all of that thinking is wrong. And acting on it is one of the main ways people delay or destroy the very momentum they're trying to build. The problem isn't the strategy. The problem is that compounding has a shape. It looks flat for a long time and then it doesn't. And because we're wired to expect linear progress, we panic or pivot right before the curve bends upward. There are also quieter ways people sabotage this without realizing it. Every time income rises, lifestyle expands to match. The surplus evaporates. Capital never reaches critical mass. The engine never fully turns on. They reset the clock without meaning to, over and over again. Understanding the 3 tipping points doesn't just explain what's coming, it makes it far harder to accidentally undo your own progress. Tipping point 1. When your money starts outworking you. The first shift is mechanical, and it's the one most people don't notice when it happens. In the early stages of building wealth, you are the engine. Your net worth moves almost entirely because of what you add. Save more, it grows. Stop saving, it stalls. Returns exist, but on a small base they're almost invisible. Background noise. Here's the math. Say you earn $60,000 a year and manage to invest $10,000 annually. If your portfolio is $30,000, an 8% return adds $2,400 for the year. You barely notice it against your contributions. Fast forward 10 to 15 years of consistency. Now that portfolio is $200,000. The same 8% return adds $16,000 in a single year. That's more than you're contributing, without working an extra hour, taking on more risk, or changing anything about your behaviour. Same discipline? Completely different outcome. Because the base is larger. This is tipping point 1. The moment when your portfolio's annual return exceeds your annual contribution. Your money stops being a passenger and starts being a co-pilot. And something shifts psychologically too. Before this point, a bad market month feels personal, like wasted effort. After it, volatility becomes less threatening. You understand intuitively that short-term movement matters less than staying invested. You stop reacting and start trusting the process, not out of blind faith, but because you can actually see the numbers doing something real. Research consistently shows that investors who trade less and stay invested longer earn higher net returns than those who chase performance. The advantage doesn't come from prediction, it comes from endurance. Tipping point 1 isn't about being rich. It's about no longer being the only force driving your financial progress. Once that happens, the momentum builds toward the next shift. Here's the version of this that trips most people up. They reach the edge of tipping point 1, and then lifestyle inflation resets the clock. Income goes up, spending goes up, invested capital never hits critical mass. The engine starts to fire and then stalls, again and again. The people who clear this threshold reliably do one thing differently. They let excess income stay invested long enough to compound uninterrupted. That's it. That's the whole move. Tipping point 2, when your portfolio starts to rival your paycheck. This one hits differently, because it stops being abstract. Tipping point 1 is mathematical. Your returns outpace your contributions on paper. Tipping point 2 is psychological. Your portfolio starts generating numbers you can actually compare to your salary. You look at what your investments produced last year and realise it's approaching what you earn from work. That moment changes everything. Until now, your salary has been the unquestioned centre of your financial life. It pays the bills, funds the lifestyle, supplies the capital you invest. Your portfolio exists in the background. But once asset growth starts matching a meaningful portion of your paycheck, that hierarchy starts to shift. Consider someone earning $80,000 a year. After tax, maybe $55,000 hits their account. If their portfolio is generating $30,000 to $40,000 in returns during a normal market year, The comparison becomes unavoidable. That's a second income stream that doesn't require a single additional hour. And here's what that actually does to your life. Not theoretically, but practically. A bad job situation stops feeling catastrophic. You negotiate differently because you can afford to walk away. Decisions slow down in the best possible way. You gain something most people never have, the ability to wait. There's also a spending shift that happens at this stage that nobody talks about. People who reach tipping point 2 tend to become more selective, not more extravagant. When you can see your investments doing real work, waste becomes visible in a way it wasn't before. Every unnecessary expense gets measured against what that money could have compounded into. The opportunity cost stops being theoretical. Income from capital scales differently than income from labour. Your salary is capped by time, energy and market demand. Asset returns scale with size. A larger portfolio doesn't need more hours to produce more. It just needs to exist. This tipping point doesn't mean financial independence. You still work, you still earn, but the balance of power shifts. Work becomes less of a necessity and more of a choice, which sets up the final and most misunderstood turning point. I want to be clear about something before we get to tipping point 3. Most people think this final shift is about a number, some magic net worth figure where everything changes. It's not. It's about a ratio, and that distinction completely changes how you think about getting there. Tipping point 3, when work becomes optional. The third tipping point isn't defined by wealth, it's defined by leverage. Work stops being necessary for survival and becomes a choice about how you want to spend your time. Your net worth doesn't just fund your lifestyle at this point, it absorbs uncertainty. Research on long-term wealth accumulation shows that once investment income consistently covers 60 to 80% of basic living expenses, people dramatically reduce their dependence on earned income, even if they never formally retire. And here's the data point that reframes everything. Households in the top 10% of net worth derive more than half of their total income from assets, not labour. The defining factor isn't extreme wealth, it's the proportion of income coming from capital. Think about what that does to behaviour. People with significant non-labour income are less likely to accept bad jobs, less reactive to short-term income shocks, and less desperate in negotiations. Their careers become less linear. Gaps, transitions, career pivots become manageable because the downside risk is buffered by what they've built. When income is no longer tightly coupled to effort, decisions slow down. You stop optimizing every move for immediate financial return. You start optimizing for durability and positioning instead. And that shift, from reactive to strategic, quietly compounds into better outcomes over decades. There's also something economic systems don't advertise openly. They reward people who can wait and penalise those who can't. When you need money now, you accept worse terms, lower pay, worse conditions, higher stress. When you don't face that pressure, you negotiate differently. You wait. You walk away. Over time, that compounds into better opportunities, not because of superior talent, but because of reduced exposure to bad choices. And one more thing worth saying, tipping point 3 doesn't mean work disappears. Studies consistently show that financially independent people often keep working. What changes is the nature of it. Hours drop, autonomy increases, purpose replaces urgency, work shifts from income generation to something more like identity, contribution, curiosity. This is also where the idea of enough finally becomes visible. When more money no longer meaningfully increases your security, behaviour changes. Consumption stabilises. Time becomes the scarce resource, not money. Your net worth stops being something you chase. It becomes infrastructure, shaping your options, your resilience, and how you move through the world. So let's bring this back to where most people actually are right now. Because the question isn't if these tipping points exist. The math guarantees they do. The question is whether you will still be invested when they hit, or whether slow progress talked you out of it first. Most people quit during the flat part of the curve, right before the bend. They try a different strategy, inflate their lifestyle, or just lose faith that it's working, and reset the clock without realising it. Don't do that. The 3 tipping points are not rare. They're not reserved for high earners or people who got lucky. They are the natural result of staying in long enough for the math to do what the math does. Tipping point 1, your returns outpace your contributions. Tipping point 2, your portfolio starts to rival your paycheck. Tipping point 3, work becomes a choice. You don't have to hit all 3 to change your life, but you do have to stay in long enough to hit the first one. If this reframed how you think about the slow phase, hit like. It helps more people find this content. And if you want to keep going, the next video covers exactly where your net worth stands right now compared to everyone else, and why the structure of it matters more than the total. See you there.